purchased for you. They're all for you. So we have with us today Mrs. Tiffany Miles, and we have a couple of other members that are here from our Shelton State Diversity Committee. It's a new committee that I'm quite sure she can tell you more about, but I myself am also a part of that group, and so we're trying to do what diversity committees do, bring awareness to cultural equality and equity issues on campus for students and for employees. So we have her here with us. We did have another presenter listed, but Ms. Kelly Griffiths, she is out sick right now, so we hope she gets to have a speedy recovery. But we're going to turn it over to Mrs. Miles and let her have the floor. You have an evaluation and a agenda on this little nice pink form that I made for you. So students at the bottom, make sure you fill in your information for a chance to win a $100 book award. And then on the back, when you're done, you're free to fill out that evaluation and leave it with me. Ms. Tiffany?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I am Tiffany Miles, Curriculum Specialist here at Shelton State. And everybody asks me, what does that mean? It kind of means just do what they tell you to do. I am over the catalog, the new degree-work system that the students have been exposed to, and now graduation application processes. So I'm a little bit busy, and then today we've been doing WOW, so you know, it's all that other stuff that we do. And I'm the chair of the diversity committee. So a couple months ago, the University of Alabama hosted some events on campus, and I think it was like right after Martin Luther King's Day, where they were hosting different types of, you know, things to celebrate MLK, and it then kind of rolled into Black History Month. And one of the seminars that they had was called Colorblind or Color Brave. So when I saw it pop up on the UA website, I thought, well, let me email the diversity team to go so that we can go over and see. So it was just for students, but they did allow a few of us to go over, and we sat in the very back of this huge classroom and just kind of watched them interact. And after that, after what we observed, we felt like it would be something beneficial to Shelton State students and faculty and staff. So, Colorblind or Color Brave, it's a video that goes with it, and we're going to watch that first, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction. So many people don't want to talk about race. They're just uncomfortable, right? Anybody here feel uncomfortable talking about race issues? Ooh, I got a breaker. Mm-hmm. And you said, you know, just depends, right? So it depends sometimes on who you're around, who you're with, how heated the conversation is, or whatever the case may be. They are comfortable believing they are colorblind. This lady that's going to do the video, her name is Melody Hobson. She's president of Ariel Investments, and she avows that this sentiment is harmful, being colorblind, especially as it pertains to hiring and workplace practices. And of course, we can, you know, move that to other areas of our lives. It doesn't just have to be in the workplace or the school, but in every area of our lives. We can't turn a blind eye to stuff. It doesn't make it go away, right? And so we need to be more conscious and aware of how we're handling things. The only way to combat racial discrimination, says Hobson, is to be color brave and to tackle the issue head on. So we're going to look at the video from her first, and then we're going to have some discussion about what she talks about in the video about being colorblind and color brave.
So it's 2006. My friend Harold Ford calls me. He's running for U.S. Senate in Tennessee. And he says, Melody, I desperately need some national press. Do you have any ideas? So I had an idea. I called a friend who was in New York at one of the most successful media companies in the world. And she said, why don't we host an editorial board lunch for Harold? You come with him. Harold and I arrive in New York. We are in our best suits. We look like shiny new pennies. And we get to the receptionist and we say, we're here for the lunch. She motions for us to follow her. We walk through a series of corridors, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a stark room, at which point she looks at us and she says, "Where are your uniforms?" Just as this happens, my friend rushes in. The blood drains from her face. There are literally no words, right? And I look at her and I say, "Now, don't you think we need more than one black person in the US Senate?" Now, Harold and I, we still laugh about that story. And in many ways, the moment caught me off guard. But deep, deep down inside, I actually wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised because of something my mother taught me about 30 years before. You see, my mother was ruthlessly realistic. I remember one day coming home from a birthday party where I was the only black kid invited. And instead of asking me the normal motherly questions like, "Did you have fun?" or "How was the cake?" my mother looked at me and she said, "How did they treat you?" I was 7. I did not understand. I mean, why would anyone treat me differently? But she knew. And she looked me right in the eye and she said, "They will not always treat you well." Now, race is one of those topics in America that makes people extraordinarily uncomfortable. You bring it up at a dinner party or in a workplace environment, it is literally the conversational equivalent of touching the third rail. There is shock, followed by a long silence. And even coming here today, I told some friends and colleagues that I plan to talk about race, and they warned me. They told me, "Don't do it. There'd be huge risks in me talking about this topic. That people might think I'm a militant black woman and I would ruin my career." And I have to tell you, I actually for a moment was a bit afraid. Then I realized the first step to solving any problem is to not hide from it. And the first step to any form of action is awareness. And so I decided to actually talk about race. And I decided that if I came here and shared with you some of my experiences, then maybe we could all be a little less anxious and a little more bold in our conversations about race. Now, I know there are people out there who will say that the election of Barack Obama meant that it was the end of racial discrimination for all eternity, right? But I work in the investment business, and we have a saying: the numbers do not lie. And here, there are significant, quantifiable racial disparities that cannot be ignored in household wealth, household income, job opportunities, healthcare. One example from corporate America. Even though white men make up just 30% of the US population, they hold 70% of all corporate board seats. Of this Fortune 250, there are only 7 CEOs that are minorities. And of the thousands of publicly traded companies today, thousands, only 2 are chaired by black women. And you're looking at one of them, the same one who not too long ago was nearly mistaken for kitchen help. So that is a fact. Now, I have this thought experience that I play with myself, experiment. And I say, imagine if I walked you into a room and it was of a major corporation like ExxonMobil, and every single person around the boardroom were black, you would think that were weird. But if I walked you into a Fortune 500 company and every around the table is a white male, when will it be that we think that's weird too? And I know how we got here. I know how we got here. You know, there was institutionalized and one time legalized discrimination in our country. There's no question about it. But I still, as I sort of grapple with this issue, my mother's question hangs in the air for me. How did they treat you? Now, I do not raise this issue to complain or in any way elicit any kind of sympathy. I have succeeded in my life beyond my wildest expectations. And I've been treated well by people of all races more often than I have not. I tell the uniform story because it happened. I cite those statistics around corporate board diversity because they are real. And I stand here today talking about this issue of racial discrimination because I believe it threatens to rob another generation of all the opportunities that all of us want for all of our children, no matter what their color or where they come from. And I think it also threatens to hold back businesses. You see, researchers have coined this term color blindness to describe a learned behavior where we pretend that we don't notice race. If you happen to be surrounded by a bunch of people who look like you, that's purely accidental. Now, color blindness, in my view, doesn't mean that there's no racial discrimination and there's fairness. It doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't ensure it. In my view, color blindness is very dangerous because it means we're ignoring the problem. There was a corporate study that said that instead of avoiding race, the really smart corporations actually deal with it head on. They actually recognize that embracing diversity means recognizing all races, including the majority one. But I'll be the first one to tell you, this subject matter can be hard, awkward, uncomfortable, but that's kind of the point. In the spirit of debunking racial stereotypes, the one that black people don't like to swim, I'm going to tell you how much I love to swim. I love to swim so much that as an adult, I swim with a coach. And one day my coach had me do a drill where I had to swim to one end of a 25-meter pool without taking a breath. And every single time I failed, I had to start over. And I failed a lot. By the end, I got it, but I got out of the pool, I was exasperated and tired and annoyed. And I said, why are we doing breath-holding exercises? And my coach looked at me and he said, Melody, that was not a breath-holding exercise. That drill was to make you comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's how most of us spend our days. If we can learn to deal with our discomfort and just relax into it, we'll have a better life. So I think it's time for us to be comfortable with the uncomfortable conversation about race. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, male, female, all of us. If we truly believe in equal rights and equal opportunity in America, I think we have to have real conversations about this issue. We cannot afford to be colorblind. We have to be color brave. We have to be willing, as teachers and parents and entrepreneurs and scientists, we have to be willing to have proactive conversations about race with honesty and understanding and courage. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the smart thing to do. Because our businesses and our products and our science, our research, all of that will be better with greater diversity. Now, my favorite example of color bravery is a guy named John Skipper. He runs ESPN. He's a North Carolina native, quintessential Southern gentleman, white. He joined ESPN, which already had a culture of inclusion and diversity, but he took it up a notch. He demanded that every open position have a diverse slate of candidates. Now, he says the senior people in the beginning bristled, and they would come to him and say, do you want me to hire the minority, or do you want me to hire the best person for the job? And Skipper says his answers were always the same, yes. And by saying yes to diversity, I honestly believe that ESPN is the most valuable cable franchise in the world. I think that's a part of the secret sauce. Now I can tell you in my own industry, at Ariel Investments, we actually view our diversity as a competitive advantage. And that advantage can extend way beyond business. There's a guy named Scott Page at the University of Michigan. He's the first person to develop a mathematical calculation for diversity. He says if you're trying to solve a really hard problem, really hard, that you should have a diverse group of people, including those with diverse intellects. The example that he gives is the smallpox epidemic. When it was ravaging Europe, they brought together all these scientists and they were stumped. And the beginnings of the cure to the disease came from the most unlikely source, a dairy farmer. A dairy farmer who noticed that the milkmaids were not getting smallpox. And the smallpox vaccination is bovine-based because of that dairy farmer. Now I'm sure you're sitting here and you're saying, I don't run a cable company, I don't run an investment firm, I am not a dairy farmer, what can I do? And I'm telling you, you can be color brave. If you're a part of a hiring process or an admissions process, you can be color brave. If you are trying to solve a really hard problem, you can speak up and be color brave. Now, I know people will say, but that doesn't add up to a lot. But I'm actually asking you to do something really simple. Observe your environment. At work, at school, at home. I'm asking you to look at the people around you purposefully and intentionally. Invite people into your life who don't look like you, don't think like you, don't act like you, don't come from where you come from. And you might find that they will challenge your assumptions and make you grow as a person. You might get powerful new insights from these individuals. Or, like my husband who happens to be white, you might learn that black people, men, women, children, we use body lotion every single day. Now, I also think that this is very important so that the next generation really understands that this progress will help them, because they're expecting us to be great role models. And I told you my mother, she was ruthlessly realistic. She was an unbelievable role model. She was the kind of person who got to be the way she was because she was a single mom with 6 kids in Chicago. She was in the real estate business, where she worked extraordinarily hard, but oftentimes had a hard time making ends meet. And that meant sometimes we got our phone disconnected, or our lights turned off, or we got evicted. And when we got evicted, sometimes we lived in these small apartments that she owned, sometimes in only 1 or 2 rooms because they weren't completed. And we would heat our bathwater on hot plates. But she never gave up hope, ever. And she never allowed us to give up hope either. This brutal pragmatism that she had, I mean, I was 4 and she told me, "Mommy is Santa." She was this brutal pragmatism. She taught me so many lessons, but the most important lesson was that every single day she told me, "Melody, you can be anything, anything." And because of those words, I would wake up at the crack of dawn, and because of those words, I would love school more than anything, and because of those words, when I was on a bus going to school, I dreamed the biggest dreams. And it's because of those words that I stand here right now, full of passion, asking you to be brave for the kids who are dreaming those dreams today. You see, I want them to look at a CEO on television and say, "I can be like her," or "He looks like me." And I want them to know that anything is possible, that they can achieve the highest level that they ever imagined, that they will be welcome in any corporate boardroom, or they can lead any company. You see this idea of being the land of the free and the home of the brave? It's woven into the fabric of America. America, when we have a challenge, we take it head on. We don't shrink away from it. We take a stand. We show courage. So right now, what I'm asking you to do, I'm asking you to show courage. I'm asking you to be bold. As business leaders, I'm asking you not to leave anything on the table. As citizens, I'm asking you not to leave any child behind. I'm asking you not to be colorblind, but to be color brave, so that every child knows that their future matters and their dreams are possible. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
All right, what y'all think?
That was good.
That was good. That's the way I felt when I watched this video. I'm like, oh my God, she's speaking my language. All right, so in the video, she said that the one thing that her mom always asked her was how they treat you. Why do y'all think that was so important for her mom? Anybody?
I guess because, like, as far as she recognizing that, like, they might not treat you the way that your family treats you, and it might be different. It might not be all love involved, and that's why she's asking, see what's their differences, like, oh, you couldn't do this, but they can go do this, you know, stuff like that.
Mind you, she talked about they were poor, and so they had to heat their bathwater on hot plates, right? So her mom understood. Sometimes as children, we don't quite understand where we are in the world. But her mom understood that we're poor, but you have to go out in the world and mix and mingle with everybody else. And as parents, we have to release our children to do so, right? And somebody had to release you. Your parent had to do the same thing. And so her mom was always cautious to put that in the forefront of her mind, You need to look at how people are really treating you. You need to not be naive, because there are situations that count against diversity, that count against inclusion in the world, and that's just the truth of the matter. All right, so one other thing she said was to get comfortable being uncomfortable. A lot of times we don't want to have in conversations about race. We don't want to talk about homosexuality. We don't want to talk about these subjects that's going to cause us to be uncomfortable. But she did say we need to encourage people in our circles that's going to help us grow in those areas. Just because somebody is black doesn't mean that they're going to go and shoot up your house. Does it? Or just because somebody is white doesn't mean that they automatically hate black people. Do it? You know, when I was growing up, there was a rule in my house that we didn't talk black and white. And it's a rule in my house now. If you're describing, my kids come home and they say the girl at school, and I will say, who is she? Describe her to me. And the first thing they say, well, the Chinese girl. And I'll be like, no, that's not what she is. You don't know if she's from China or not, do you? No, so describe her to me. She has long brown hair, or she has blue eyes, or, her dad drives the red truck, or something else. We need to look beyond the surface of people, their outer appearance, and look deep and try to find those good qualities. Because you know what? If we start to let people in and get to know people, we'll find out that oftentimes they have more in common with us than we thought, right? But as long as we don't want to address things and we feel like something's contagious and it's going to jump off of them onto us and bite us, we'll stay in this little box and we'll never grow. I don't want anything to hinder me. I don't want anything to stunt my growth. So I don't want to be in this little box, but I have to open up and let other people in. So why do you think that avoiding conversations like this is harmful?
Because people won't learn if you keep avoiding it. It will always get swept under the rug.
Very good. Laurier says that if we don't open up and talk, we don't open up and have conversations, we don't open up and be open to a relationship, people won't learn who we really are. And then this vicious cycle continues. How does racial discrimination manifest in society? How are we seeing it manifest here at Shelton State? How do you see it manifesting in your classrooms? Anybody? We won't go until somebody said, you don't have to call names. That's not what this is about. We're not here to bash people, but we do want to have a real conversation.
Well, I got very surprised when I came to Shelton.
Okay.
Because Shelton is an HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came here, to find out that it's a college that has, its population is mostly white, its staff is mostly white. I just joined Phi Theta Kappa and I became an officer, and I got surprised because out of the 12 officers, 1 was black. So yeah, it was surprising to me, but yeah, it's things we have to deal with.
And where are you from?
And say, also explain where you're from.
Yes,
I'm from Brazil.
from Brazil.
And he's an international student.
So culture shock. So he's not just coming from another side of the country, but he's coming from somewhere else totally and completely.
Mm-hmm.
And we are HBCU. It's something that I get asked often. I was shocked when I found out we were HBCU. I didn't know it at first. I think I had been here maybe a year or so when I heard that. And so yeah, it can be shocking because our student population, faculty, staff population doesn't look like what you would think a typical HBCU would look like. Yes, ma'am.
What does that stand for?
Historically Black college or university.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So, according to what she said, and you tell me what you think, because we're in here to have a dialogue. I'm not here to just lecture to you. What steps do you feel like we can take as students, faculty, staff here at Shelton State to tackle the issue of inequality, of racism, of lack of diversity? Any of those things.
one thing is, like you said, just open the door for the communication, basically, and that's both sides of the communication. Be willing to talk about it, but also be willing to listen, and accept the differences, because a lot of time in diversity, people they'll listen to you, but they still don't want to take it in and accept and own that that's what it is. You know, you still want to justify and make excuses for it, but you really can't. You have to, you know, if that's how they feel, you have to sit in there and you have to accept that and kind of try and find a resolve and move on from it.
It's accepting somebody else's truth.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't change who you are. Doesn't change who they are. But sometimes just accepting somebody else's truth. You know, accepting the different challenges that different groups face. I may not be, I don't know what international students have to go through. Honestly, I've worked with very few. So I'm pretty sure there are some challenges that come from just transitioning from one place to another, the onboarding when it comes to paperwork and all that different stuff. But then the culture that you come into, I'm pretty sure that can be very challenging. And that's his truth. And I can say all day, it wasn't hard. We got somebody here to help him, whatever, but that doesn't mean, that takes away or demeans his experience, and that's what we should not do. Morgan?
Listening, I was just thinking, are we brave enough to have the conversations?
Come on.
Because I know me as a staff member, I've experienced racism, and it's hard for me to open up and discuss it because, there's so many conflicts that can get in the way. It's my job at state if I speak up. For students, they're probably not strong enough because they're learning, they're growing to have these conversations. So if we want to make a change and we want to start having conversations, are we brave enough to speak up?
Well, that brings us to another question. Who has been color brave? Are there times in your life that you have found yourself being color brave? Anybody?
I know it was at work, and so one of the workers, of course, they're white, and so they don't know that it was shocking to me to find out that some people still don't know that and racial injustice goes on. And so one of the students was talking about they had to go up north, and they were scared about going up north because of getting afraid of being pulled by the police and, being assaulted because of them being black. And so this worker, they was like, that's not going to happen. They don't do stuff like that. And we're like, what you been your whole life that you didn't know? And so in that moment, I had to explain to him, like, no, this stuff goes on, because he was thinking that, oh, they just making stuff up. And so explaining to him, like, hey, this stuff been going on since long before we was born. And when we explained it to him, then he began to understand it, okay, because he thought that, oh, they're just picking on white people or whatever. And it wasn't that kind of situation, that they was afraid, to travel up that way because they know they've been seeing what's on the news and everything.
On the news.
Right.
There's a lot in the media right now, and the media can, be positive and negative. I feel like a lot of stuff is just blown way out of proportion, but there's a lot in the news. There's a lot that's being seen.
Yeah.
What about anyone else? Anybody else want to share a color brave or a color blind experience?
I feel like as a person of color, I am being color brave every single minute of my life. Every room I walk in, like, it's a 24/7 thing, and it's something personal.
Okay.
Like, I don't have to show that I'm being brave to someone. I don't have to confront someone.
It's who you are.
But I have to confront myself. I have to be comfortable with myself and my color. And yeah, I think as a person of color, it's a 24/7 thing.
Okay, anyone else? One of the students shared when we went over to UA, maybe it was the lady that was presenting, about a time where they could have stood up for someone that was facing an issue with racism, and they didn't do it. And I know that can be hard. because do I stand up and say, you're wrong, or, do I respectfully say, now, that could have been handled differently? Or do I just walk over and embrace that person and say, I know that was hard, but you did a really good job. Do something. And then at the end of the day, you got to be able to look in the mirror at yourself and be comfortable with what you see looking back at you. Are you seeing somebody that's afraid? Are you seeing someone that's not brave enough to have the conversations? And listen, I'm not telling you to go start a riot somewhere. Tell y'all, don't y'all leave this meeting. Don't start running around in the room. Don't y'all leave this meeting. Say that lady said, go and start a march out there on 69 and stop traffic. That's not what I said.
Oh, man.
It's not what I said. It's not what I said. That ain't what I said, though. That's not what I said. Listen, when Emancis got killed at the Galleria Thanksgiving, y'all remember that in Birmingham? And the people were upset because it wasn't handled right. And I don't agree with how everything was handled either. But I don't agree with the protests to go the way that they went either. So they wanted to stop people from going to the Galleria because it happened there. But think about the businesses that it hurt.
Yeah.
Think about the livelihood. There was this church that opened their doors and they started bringing in truckloads of food because people at Christmas time couldn't feed their families. Because we're protesting in our rights. Your rights are your rights, but we have to be careful that we're not expressing them in such a way that we're harming our community instead of helping. Bringing awareness is one thing, but where does awareness need to start? Within yourself. I can't say, now Gladys, now you know, you should. And I hadn't looked at myself. Right? That's wrong. You remember the saying, you're pointing at somebody else, but you got 3 other fingers pointing back at you. So you got to be careful that we're not spewing hatred and pretending like we got it all together when we don't. And that's what brings us together. When we start to work on ourselves, I don't have time to worry about Michelle and all that's going on in her life. Why? Because Tiffany got too much going on herself. I can barely keep up with me. Right? So I need to make sure that I'm being brave and I'm addressing issues within myself and within my home and within my family. Right? Because guess what? Racism don't just start away from home, it starts at the house. Any of you ever experienced that? Guess what? I was too dark. My sister looked like Michelle. And Daddy hovered over her. She was just his baby until she got pregnant in high school and dropped out. And things kind of went south with their relationship. And that didn't make her be a bad person. She made a bad decision, and there she goes with it, She's done well with those 5 boys that she had. But I was too dark. So that damaged me for a long time. I had to figure out who I was because I didn't look like what was acceptable. So there are stereotypes and there are different levels to this thing. I'm not telling you to go bite off more than you can chew. Today we just wanted to raise awareness that this is an issue. Racism, inequality, discrimination. It's an issue. It's an issue here at Shelton State. It's an issue here in our own hearts, in our own minds. Right? Why do you think that sometimes you're not color brave?
I don't know. Usually, just thought it'd be best just to not worry about it, I guess.
Not to worry about it. How many people have been in situations where you felt like that? I have. Yeah, because I don't want to deal with it. Like, I get tired of fighting the battle. Right? Get tired of trying to bring awareness. And sometimes you just want to rest. So yes, I'll turn the blind eye to it. And we won't have a difficult conversation. But then when I go look in the mirror, or at night when I'm in the bed, and the thoughts are playing over in my head of the day. Can I live with myself? Can I live with myself? So are we going to be colorblind or color brave? Hobson says, we cannot afford. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, I missed you.
I know, like, as far as like being colorblind, I think what was hard for me growing up was the fact of being like that in your family, because like all my friends always had, it was always mixed and diverse. But my parents, like the way they raised us, like you can have friends like that all day, but you can't date a white person, you can't marry the right person, and that's how it was. And so when I would date a white person, they were like, oh no, you ain't gonna do that. You know, because they looking at the history and everything. And it's like, well, they gonna call you the N-word. I'm looking like, not everybody's gonna call me that. And so, and then even though I have some relatives that are married to a white person, but they're like, you just better not do that. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Well, I get it. So my cousin walks into my uncle's funeral Saturday with this lady, and she looks white, but she's not. But, you know, the head's kind of turned.
Yeah.
So somebody goes, well, he's from up north, you know, right? Right? He's from up north. We don't do that in the South, right? And then there's a cousin at the table in the repast, and they're all talking, and it just kind of hit me. He lives in Shelton County. Who knows what Shelton County is? It's where we get the majority of our wood from. Peaches. In this state, and I'm pretty sure it's less than an hour away. Okay. Well, he's married to a white lady. She just didn't come to the funeral. That probably would have toppled him over.
Yeah.
My godbrother came to live with me when he had gotten sick a couple of years ago, and we were riding down Jack Warner, and he said, what in the world? What is going on? And I'm trying to remember, like, well, what is going on? I don't see anything. He said, all these people walking. I said, oh, it's the park. Y'all know the river walk?
Yeah.
He said, but the blacks and the whites. I said, Martin Luther King would be proud. But it took him out. Guess where he's from? Selma, Alabama.
Wow.
That's not happening in Selma. So it's not far away, y'all. It's right here among us.
Well, I do have a comment for
Yes.
you. I have two children, two
Yeah.
sons, and I've gone through the dating from different races, and I'm speaking as a parent now. When your parent said to you, "Oh, let's think about this thing," I had to grapple with that myself.
Yeah.
You know, and you go through the whole thing of, well, they don't look like me. What's wrong with me? Because a mother in particular with a son, think about what did I do wrong that he won't pick anyone who looks like me.
Yeah.
So there's, like she said, layers and layers and layers that as a person, you know, we have to deal with and work through. It ain't easy.
Yeah.
It just isn't. It's no easy answers, because the other part of it is your parents that live through things that they try to protect you from.
Right.
So think about it that way too.
Yeah.
So don't just say, oh, the parents, they don't get it. Yes, they do.
They need it.
Yeah.
They absolutely get it.
You know, my middle son, you know, had been teeter-tottering about letting this girl come home, and I think it was Christmas break, he asked if she could come over, and I said, yeah, that's fine. And so I walk in the dining room, and there are 3 white girls sitting at my dining room table, and I go, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that, but okay, that's fine. And he was like, Mom, well, I mean, it just took me off guard. I didn't know. I mean, I could care less. I mean, as long as it's good, it's good. But it really shocked me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because in the news, we constantly see black men and the white girl and something go wrong or whatever. So I can't stand here and lie and say that I'm not affected.
Yeah.
But I had to check myself, to go in the bathroom and pull it together.
Yeah.
And it's been fine. I don't treat her no different or whatever. Well, it's over with now, but I didn't treat her any different. And she wondered, you know, does she really like me? Because she's scared too. She kind of checking me out and I'm checking her out. But then she posted on Snapchat, you know, his mom really likes me. Because she was sick that night and we made her some tea and we sat and chatted and whatever. I I'm skeptical about all girls. I have nothing but boys, so that's the bottom line. So she could have been as dark as the back of this chair, wouldn't have made no difference. I'd probably been like, oh, okay, where you come from? Who are you? You know. But that's just the mama side. So there are cultural differences within cultural differences. There are generational differences on top of generational differences. But are we brave enough, as Lamarie said, to have those conversations and to help our families grow? Or are we going to continue to be passive or not be brave or to embrace color blindness, and we continue that on too? If you check the climate in this country, you know that it's not getting better. It's not getting better. It's continually getting worse. That's all I got, y'all. Any questions?
I think like Lamarie was talking about too, though, I think it would be a lot easier if you didn't have to worry about a retaliatory environment when you do address the issues. That would make it a whole lot easier for everybody.
Well, you know, there are some, there are always situations, and I think that as a person, you weigh the cost, you count up the cost. Is it worth the battle? You know, that saying about picking your battles. It very well could, but I had a situation come up a couple months ago, and I just could not rest. To say the least, I could not rest, and I had to address it. First time I've ever done that at that level, because it could have cost me my job. It literally could have cost me my job, but I don't know, y'all. It's a braveness, a boldness that swept over me that day, and I didn't tremble and I didn't flinch because I knew that I was standing up for what was right. And I was just like, I don't know how many people pray, but this is my thing. I prayed and I was like, God, you open this door for me to be chair of this committee, and I can't lead these people if I'm not going to be brave. So you give me what I need to do, what needs to be done. And he did. He did. Now, is it going to change anything? I don't know. But guess what? They got to look in the mirror just like I do. Not saying something sometimes is adding more, giving them more courage and kind of diminishing who we are. Anything else?
Well, from my standpoint, I know I had a color brave situation back when I was in high school. The national protest for the national anthem and everything, and I just wasn't doing it because Colin Kaepernick was doing it. I was just no. So like when I sat down and I thought about it and what was going on in the world at the time and still going on right now, I said to myself, being a teenager and seeing something going on like that, and especially at the school I was at, it's very diverse there, and I was like, I need to do something. So I sat down and I literally read the national anthem, and I was like, okay, it's just more to it than just protesting for police brutality. I said, this is something we've seen and we praise it so much, but if we really sit down and read it, we wouldn't praise it as much as we want to. So when I started it in class one day, and they were like, hey, you okay? And I always had knee problems, so they were like, your knees hurt or something? I'm like, no, I'm fine. And one day I decided to do it before a football game. And it was a JV game, and I wasn't playing. We were at ACA, and ACA is a very Christian academy, and they love to play the national anthem. So I sat down on one knee, and literally, their coach, my coach, came to me and said, are you okay? What's your problem? My coach pulled me to the side again. He was like, well, you can't be doing all that, not in front of these people, man, because, this and that, no, man, they doing this for us. I'm like, nah, coach, there's more to it than that. I said, we act so blind to situations because we always want to turn our heads to everything. And I said, sometimes we have to take the initiative. Sometimes we have to go the extra mile. Because as a young black man in the world, it's really hard for people to say they reached the age that I've reached. Like last year I lost a homeboy and we ain't nothing but 6-7 days apart. I said, it's hard. I said, you can be at home doing nothing. Your life can be taken away. I said, you can just be driving down the road. I said, thankfully, my mom has never had a conversation with me about the police. And I've been driving.
Oh, but your mom was praying, really?
But every time, yeah, she was praying. But like, I've never had that conversation with her. But when I think about it, I thank God that I have a way with words. And I can talk myself out of any situation, pretty much. But I still sit back and reflect. I'm like, I know people who have been judged by police. I know police officers. And I know police officers who are quick to judge just because I'm riding in the neighborhood and I have an old 1990-something Honda Accord. Yeah, you don't belong here. I was dating this girl one time and I got so scared because she lived in an upper class neighborhood. And when I would come over, my car looked like, yeah, it was a lemon. Just put it like that, it was a lemon. And I was like, yeah, it's, okay. Yeah, she's the same color as me, but in the neighborhood, I don't feel comfortable. And I just turned my head away from it. And then after a while, I was like, I just can't keep doing it. And you know, as people, as in this generation, they don't want to speak up. And it has to be something very tragic in order for somebody just to come together about the situation.
And then it gets to be extreme. But if we would stop turning our eyes to things, whether it's the Black community, the white community, the Jewish community, whatever in the world, period, if we would just stop turning our eyes to everything and just saying it's not happening or it's not relevant to me, then, you know, and start to address things in small ways within ourselves, with our family, amongst our peers, or whatever. It doesn't have to be some major. Again, I mean, put this disclaimer. I didn't say go shut down 69 and stop people from coming or going to Winn-Dixie or whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant like that. But we just need to be aware of our own biases, aware of our own fears, aware of our own responses before we go and try to tackle somebody else. Okay. Anything else?
With being color brave, I'm just sitting here thinking, how can we have these conversations and not start a riot or saying, well, Lamourier, you're being too much, or Lamourier, you know, that's not what is coming across here. You know what I mean? What can we do to have these conversations? Because we're at a community college. There's diversity going on all the time. And there's racism going on all the time. Because, I'm sorry, it's not going to end anytime soon. So how are we able to have a calm, collective conversation?
Well, I think first of all, we need to stop looking at it as it needs to be a calm and collective conversation.
Okay.
You know why? Because we can't control what the other person does or says.
Okay.
You know, and if I said pick your battles, if you're gonna have a conversation, say your piece. I mean, it is what it is. That's just who I am now. You know, you have to be you. But I'm the type person, Michelle told me recently, we had a meeting and she was like, Tiffany, I don't see how you handle things like that. You just have a way with words, and that's a gift, I guess. So I just say how I feel, and I think, man, you know you could have handled that differently. And then I might walk over and hug her and just be me. Girl, we gonna have to work on that. You know, trust me, right? Now, I may not be able to do that with everybody, but I kind of know Tisha, right?
Yeah.
So those people that we kind of know, we know where they are, kind of what their responses are gonna be.
I think it has to do with how you approach something.
But how you approach it.
Sets the conversation, whether it's going to be volatile or whether it's going to be inquisitive, whether it's just informative. I know in our office, they'll be talking about things, Shay and Kylie, and I'm like, what are y'all talking about? You know, and then they'll fill me in on what they're talking about. And so that opens the conversation between us about just different cultures and the way they do certain things versus the way, and I'm older than they are too. I mean, I've got a lot of years on them, so there's an age gap that makes things different. And, you know, they may do things a certain way, and it could be because of their race, it could be because of their age, you know, and we don't have anybody in between us. They're a good bit younger than I am, and so there's a big gap there, you know, in how things are going.
Right. Good.
And I feel like we don't always have to like reach out and say like, it doesn't have to be verbal. It can be through your actions, you know,
That's
like,
good.
I got the chance to become president of Phi Theta Kappa, and I have people reach me and be like, oh, I'm so glad that you're president. Like, I feel represented because you're black. And I got surprised because I have heard people say, oh, you're not black enough, you know, or, you know, like, there'll always be something. But I know that I have changed people's perception because I went there and I did something, and now they can see that they can go there and do it too. So yeah, I feel like that's also a way we can change things.
That's good. Yes, ma'am.
However, the one thing that has to change on this campus, and it doesn't have to be a mass movement, it can be done within each individual person. The one thing we have to do is stop acting as if the problem does not exist.
Yes.
Whether administration wants to have the conversation or not, it takes somebody, student, staff, faculty, whoever, to bring awareness to the situation. And that's why the committee exists, is to bring awareness. But there's only so much a small group of us can do, because it becomes this group only has this issue, whereas the issue is much bigger than all of us. And the other thing is that people that see the issues but only like to stir the pot. They don't want it addressed, but when you do address it, they're gonna make some noise, but it's in a negative way. Those people, you can't be afraid to call them out on their stuff.
Right, exactly.
Because again, like she said, at the end of the day, they have to look at themselves. And we do have them on both sides. You have those students. And I'm just speaking from my little self as a staff person. You do, anytime you approach a situation, you have that representative group, and it's usually the same little clique, that's going to cause issues. And you will find that there's some people that have nothing to contribute to the solution, but they contribute everything to the problem. You have to get to a point where you overlook those people and continue with your cause and make sure that what you're doing is to benefit all and not just something within yourself. But we have to stop ignoring the problem, because nothing gets better by ignoring it.
And we have to remember that everybody can do something. No matter how small, it may seem small, but at least you do something.
Yes.
You know, and like she said, it don't have to be anything extravagant or whatever. And you said it could be non-verbal. That's right. But everybody can do something to change the dynamics of a situation, to make somebody else think about what they're saying or what they're doing.
That's right. That's right.
Be as simple as removing yourself from a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
When I was teaching orientation, maybe 2 falls ago, and something came up in class, but it was about, we don't have homeless, one kid, so we don't have homeless students on campus. And I said, we don't? There's no homeless people here. I said, you'd be surprised. And he was like, no, we don't. I said, well, that would mean that we don't have homeless faculty or staff. He's like, no, people don't be homeless here. Like, not in Alabama. That's like in New York and Atlanta, them big old places. But not here. Everybody got somebody. I said, no. And so I said, is there anybody in here ever been homeless that would like to share? And so I'm still holding my hand. And so one student said, Miss Miles, are you saying that you've been homeless before? I said, yeah. Well, how in the world that happened? I said, baby, life happens.
Yeah.
I didn't plan on it happening.
Right.
But that's where I found myself one day. Right?
Right.
He didn't know it. They thought they were camping, bless their hearts.
That's funny.
Hey, we make the best of the bad situation. But we don't know. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody comes from different walks of life. Everybody comes from different family structures and dynamics. It's common to have a mother and father in the house, right? Not so common in some neighborhoods. Not so common. I was a group of girls, and I found out over 80% of those kids had a parent that had died.
Wow.
Like, no wonder y'all cutting up in school all the time. There's something broken.
Yeah.
But on the outside, you just say, those kids at such and such school are just horrible. They ain't doing nothing with them over there. And that's not the case. It's not the case. My sister teaches kindergarten. She said she's watching in the morning to see who's gobbling down breakfast. What does that mean?
They haven't eaten since
They haven't eaten since they left school yesterday.
Yeah.
And so she slips them an extra biscuit while she sends the others to bathroom break. And in the afternoon, extra snack goes in the backpack, right?
Yeah.
And if the child didn't have the necessities of life, then he can't be successful in the classroom.
Right, exactly.
And one of the necessities is for us to embrace each other, regardless of our differences. Let's embrace him as new PTK president and get behind him and support him and push him, right? Let's support, what's your name?
Caleb.
Caleb. Let's support Caleb. When you see Caleb walking down the hall, say, hey Caleb, how's it going? How are your class? You need help with something? Find a buddy. You do something outside of your norm. That's the only way we're gonna grow.
Right.
That's what she said on the video. Okay? If y'all want to copy the video, you can YouTube it. It's Colorblind or Color Brain by Melody Hobson. Share it with your friends and your family. Send me some emails or give some feedback, what you think about it. Do we need to do this again? Whatever the case may be, we can keep it going. I can talk about this all day. Thank y'all so much for having me.
So I've given everyone a pink sheet. On one side is for the students to fill out at the bottom to enter for a chance to win a $100 book award. And then on the back side is your evaluation. Even if you are a Shelton State staff member or faculty member, because this was open to the entire school and they want to see who's attending these things, make sure you fill out the sign-in sheet. Just put your name. You don't have to do your student number or anything like that. Just put your first and last name on there, and I'll know your faculty or staff. There are snacks that are available. Take these snacks out of here. I don't want them. And y'all, let's thank Miss Tiffany.